In this video I will show 5 ways to operate the Mazda 6 cruise control unit in my NB Miata project car. This is a car that came without cruise control from the factory, as is usual in Europe. That also means that on the wiper stalk behind the steering wheel there are no switches for cruise control. This image shows the dashboard of a first generation Mazda 6, the donor for the cruise control system that I'm using. The Mazda 6 steering wheel has 4 switches on the steering wheel, whereas the NB Miata has none, so we need to compensate for that. At an earlier stage I installed a Mazda 6 steering wheel, airbag and clock spring into my car and integrated the audio controls with the stock radio. After that I also integrated the illumination of the steering wheel with the interior light system of the car, and the only thing that remains to be done is to now get the cruise control functionality up and running. As an alternative to the Mazda 6 steering wheel, you could also choose the steering wheel from a third generation NC Miata. In that case you would also need to get the steering wheel, airbag and clock spring. The Mazda CX-7, an SUV, also used the same steering wheel as that was used on the third generation NC Miata. There might be some differences. The trim pieces have a different color, usually they are black, and in some cases the right side of the steering wheel has 4 buttons instead of 3, so make sure you get those with the 3 buttons, otherwise you have 1 button that will not be functioning. Your third option would be to use the steering wheel and airbag and clock spring again from a Mazda RX-8. These cars always used a dual stage airbag system, so you would have to decide for yourself whether you want to just connect one of those stages, because the NB Miata has a single stage airbag system. The common denominator of the steering wheels that we have just discussed is that they are all compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit. There is a single wire that communicates what button is pressed on the steering wheel, and it is based on different resistor values behind those buttons on the steering wheel. In this case, the resistor values for all of those steering wheels, so the Mazda 6, the NC Miata, the CX-7 and the RX-8, they all use the same resistor values and are therefore directly compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit. The next option on my list is the 3-spoke steering wheel with cruise control buttons from the Mazda Protege. Somewhere between 2001 and 2003 this steering wheel was used. It is not compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit because it uses different resistor values and also uses a latching switch instead of a momentary switch for the on-off position, but we'll come back to that later. For this option you don't need a different airbag or steering wheel because it is mechanically compatible with the NB Miata, but you will have to do some do-it-yourself activities. Some modifications are needed to make it compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit. The fifth and final option would be to use the wiper stalk from an NB generation Miata that had cruise control. In that case, that stalk will also have cruise control switches for resume, accelerate and for set and coast. The resistor values will not be compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit, so again some additional DIY is needed. And also you would need 2 additional momentary switches for on-off and cancel, but those could be placed on the covers for the steering column, for example. One of the benefits for this option is that you would not need a new steering wheel or airbag, and another benefit is that you could potentially use the audio controls from the Mazda 323F if you can find them. In previous videos I already showed where you can find the relevant cruise control parts on the Mazda 6 and how you could bench test that unit before installing it on the car. I will provide the links to those videos at the end of this video. In the next part of the video, I will show you how you can modify the Mazda Protégé cruise control buttons to become compatible with the Mazda 6 cruise control unit. These controls use 3 wires, but that has to be reduced to just 2 wires. This is the wiring diagram for the Mazda Protégé controls, which uses 3 wires towards the clock spring, and 4 switches and 3 resistors. For the main switch, it uses a separate wire in connection with a latching switch. This means the switch will remain in the open or closed position after you press the button. The other switches are momentary switches with a specific resistor value, and they will return in the open position, so they only provide a temporary signal to the cruise control unit. Here you can see the wiring diagram for the cruise control buttons on the Mazda 6, the RX-8, the CX-7 and the NC Miata. They all use the same wiring diagram and resistor values. It has 2 wires that go towards the clock spring and 4 momentary switches, so they all return to the open position after you press a button. The resistor values are different to those on the Mazda Protégé cruise control buttons. Our goal is to modify the Mazda Protégé cruise control switches to have them mimic the behavior of the Mazda 6 cruise control switches. In order to do so, we need to change the behavior of the main switch, which is currently a latching switch, but must become a momentary switch that returns to the open position after being pressed. And also for the other switches, we need to replace the resistors to make sure that they match the resistor values that are expected by the Mazda 6 cruise control unit. I disassembled and cleaned a set of these Mazda Protégé cruise control switches, which also allowed me to get a clearer view of what exactly we are dealing with. It turned out to be quite a puzzle, but I'm happy to report that I found a solution for it. As mentioned earlier, the main switch uses a latching mechanism as part of the switch. We need to modify the switch, and by removing the 2 small parts that are in the red ellipse on this image, you can transform the switch into a momentary switch that will always go back to the open position. The other switches share a printed circuit board with 3 resistors on it, and depending on what button you press determines the total resistance value. So when you press resume, it will only use the 68 ohm resistor. When you press cancel, it will use all of the resistors, so the current will flow through all resistors and you have a different total resistance value. This mechanism is completely different to what is used with the Mazda 6 cruise control switches, because in that case each of the buttons will have either no resistance for the on-off position or a dedicated resistor for that switch. To find a solution, I decided to use the PCB as a model for a template that I could then use to try out different scenarios. In the end, I managed to find a solution, a configuration that will work. I still have to implement this, but I'm confident that it will give me the desired result. I color-coded the path for each button being pressed and listed the resistors that are involved. When pressing the on-off switch, both sides of the switch are connected to close the circuit between the points B and C without a resistor being involved. So it's a short circuit actually. Here you can see the solution, the proposed configuration once more, but now with the correct backdrop of the PCB. If you want, you can check each of the paths by simulating a button press and see if you can arrive at a resistor value that is within the specified range. To complete the overview, we now look at the original Viper cruise control stock of the NB generation. This stalk has 3 wires and 2 switches, but it has no resistors in it. The resistors are placed on the printed circuit board or PCB of the combination switch. The 3 wires from the stalk or lever are soldered to the PCB of the combination switch. For cars that were not produced for the North American market, you will find 3 holes in the PCB because there are no wires in the stalk and that can be connected to this PCB. The resistors, however, are always on the PCB, so both for North American market and for other regions. This is the wiring diagram for the cruise control part of the combination switch. Pin V is connected to the cruise control module and pin AE is connected to ground. The set coast signal uses a 240 ohm resistance and the resume accelerate function uses a 910 ohm resistor value. Both signals share the same wire towards the cruise control module, which is a benefit for us. Once more, we need to make some changes to mimic the behavior of the Mazda 6 cruise control buttons. In this case, we can start out by replacing resistors on the PCB of the combination switch to match the resistor values that are expected for the set coast and the resume accelerate functions. On top of that, we need to add 2 momentary switches, one for the on-off function and one for the cancel function. You could do this by adding switches to the steering column covers. In the past, I've been using a flash-off-flash switch to do so, but you could also do 2 separate momentary switches. The one for the on-off switch has no resistor value, and the other one is for the cancel function, which has a specific resistor value for that function. Everything needs to come together for the signal wires V and AE, and I recommend you to do this on the combination switch side, so it's easier to disconnect the big connector under the steering wheel column if you need to do so at a later stage. In one of the next videos we will have a closer look at the complete wiring diagram for the Mazda 6 cruise control unit, and I will show you how I will integrate it with the wiring of the MB Miata. Please let me know in the comments which of the 5 options you would prefer, and please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And for now I would like to thank you for watching MX5 info and hope to see you again for a next video.